Okay, I'm going to do a video about communist economics because a lot of people don't seem to understand communism. They cannot comprehend how it functions or why it is the most logical option. I'm going to explain to you things as simply as I can. Free market capitalism acts as though property and labor and things like that are this endangered panda bear, and there can be no interference with it whatsoever. It just must frolic in the wild, completely free. They will reproduce, and they will live in peace with nature, and there will be abundance and things like that. We know this not to be true. Nature is a very grim, dark place, full of conflict and venom and nasty shit. So that is not a feasible economic model. The natural progress of capitalism is there has to be two different classes, those with and those without. Yes, to varying degrees this is true. There are some that have a little bit more than others, some that have a lot more than others, some that have a little bit less, people with a lot less, things like that. This is where the confusion comes in, because most people are the middle class and they think, well, I have a reasonable amount, I am content with what I have, therefore capitalism works. No, because by the very definition of capitalism, it may not always be this way. And then capitalists fall back on, well, that's just the way life is. No, that is not how reason works. You do not claim scientific promise and then say, well, that's just the way life is. You may as well just say, God wants it that way. That's basically what you're telling me. You're telling me that the economy is a religion, and you just have to take God's word for it that it's all going to work out in the end, and conveniently that always seems to work in favor of the same few elite lifetime after lifetime. So that's why the free market just has to be rejected entirely. Now, where a lot of people fall short of is socialism. It's really not that hard to be a socialist. The only difference between a socialist and a liberal or a nationalist or a Keynesian economist is the amount of socialism. Essentially, socialism just is not ashamed of itself. But it is state capitalism. It is the state intervening in the economic model because a lot of times you just cannot sustain capital enterprise. There are going to be unemployed people, and you know what that's going to create? That's going to create crime. That's going to create disparity. That's going to create conflict and wars and things like that. If you want to avoid those things, you're going to have to intervene. Eventually, the United States that prides itself as a free market capitalist society will have no choice but to follow a more socialist mode of production. Now, whether or not this socialist mode is more akin to a libertarian socialist mode, or a more democratic, or a more, nationalist, or even a more communist-oriented mode, that's up for debate. Probably not communist mode. But they will, if they want to survive, have to adopt a socialist mode of production. The state will have to intervene, or else America will fall. And there are a lot of politicians that just don't fucking care. They're busy getting money stuffed in their pockets by the very institutions that benefit from America's undoing. And so they figure, I'm content, my life is good, so therefore this model is working. And just as I said before, it doesn't work that way. So the socialist mode is that government intervenes to protect one class from another and redistributes wealth and things like that. And to some extent, this works. Because to a lot of extent, the government can always come behind you and intervene to make sure no one has too much or no one has too little. The problem is, people hold contempt for the government. They don't like the idea of an all-encompassing authority figure refereeing the entire economy and their social lives, which is understandable. But the fact is, this is a more logical argument than the free market mode of production. The fact is, you have more economic and social freedom under a socialist government than a capitalist one. And I don't care what you fucking anarcho-capitalists and things like that say, you're going to have a government either which way. Just because it's privatized does not mean it doesn't govern people. It does not mean it doesn't expect people to obey orders. The fact is, you have more government in a free market society than you do a socialist one. Because look at the internet. Look at how we're expected to follow all these fucking arbitrary rules that don't mean anything and have no basis, no argument, no, legitimacy. No one votes for these people, and yet if we don't follow them, snap of the fingers, you're banned. You can't fucking tell me with a straight face that that is somehow less interventionist, less authoritarian, and less government than an actual state government. So, I'm not even going to bother arguing with those people because they're fucking stupid and they're fucking evil. So, socialist mode of production makes sense. But as said, there is still a class war. There is still, conflict. There are still things that need to be resolved that are not going to be. The government cannot be everywhere 24 hours a day. And eventually there's going to be corruption. There always is. And this goes back and forth between the capitalist mode and the socialist mode because of the lies and propaganda and, shaking of hands, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, things like that. And communism rejects all of this. Communism rejects this paradigm shift and simply says that we should all own the means of production equally. Let's put it this way. If poverty causes crime, then if we know that if government can give welfare checks to the impoverished, making it less likely for them to commit crime, wouldn't it even more so make them less likely to commit crime if they could collectively own the means of production? If, people in the inner cities could have just as much say in engineering or, the military or whatever industrial complex you can imagine in your head, if they had just as much equal merit in those institutions as you or anybody fucking else, why would there be crime? If everybody was a corporate executive, I would think that there would be no incentive to commit crime because no one no longer has that plight of being less than. Nobody has that plight of worrying about where their next meal is going to come from. Nobody has that envy. Nobody has that jealousy. Nobody has that bitterness that comes from not having fucking anything. And then we can all work together with some semblance of decency and rationality and work toward a more progressive system that makes mankind happier, healthier, and, makes us do some amazing fucking things. Now, mind you, getting to that point is not going to be easy. Because a lot of people like to say, oh, well, communism is impossible. No, communism is not impossible. It's worked relatively well in the countries that have tried implementing it. The problem is, not everyone is a decent person. There are a lot of despicable people out there, and they will try their damnedest to undo any kind of progress, any kind of evolution in humanity. You think moderators give a shit about you now? Just imagine if they were being proven wrong. I mean, think about it. They're willing to fucking shut you up, harass you, belittle you, demonize you, and rape you for absolutely no reason. Just imagine if you took away their entitlement, their white privilege. Think about if you took away this idea that they're the ones in control. And then you give everybody the control. Everybody has equal say in everything, and we're all working together in harmony for the benefit of mankind. How do you think those moderators are going to feel? And they're going to do their fucking hardest to try and destroy that. And sometimes they do. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. That's why a lot of communist revolutionaries ended up deteriorating into social fascism and nationalism. Because there are many, many moderators. I am not saying this is going to happen overnight. What I am saying is it's that the most logical and reasonable, sound economic and social system for the human genome. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of what it means to be a communist and what it means for society to be a communist. And how sometimes you can sympathize with people that are less than a communist. Although some communists may argue about compromising on your beliefs for the greater good, because some don't think that there is a greater good. That when you say that you're willing to compromise, you are undermining the belief structure and you are just giving in to that evil. I would argue differently. But if you believe that, you are entitled to it, because proof is there is a lot of evil. So regardless of what your exact position is, you cannot deny this self-evident fact that capitalism does not work so long as there is a such thing as unemployment, poverty, and people that have less than other people. It's going to create conflict, it's going to create crime, it's going to create all these nasty things that result in more authority, more totalitarianism, more corruption, more lies, more bullshit. So our choice is either we have one referee institution that controls our everyday lives, or we have no referee institution. We don't allow people to control our lives, and we all collectively work towards something greater. And if we're going to choose that option, it's going to be a long road. We may not see it in our lifetime, but we can work toward it. And by working toward it, it's better than life was yesterday. The less moderators in the world, the better. So that's all I have to say for now.